Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're stepping off the familiar path, going for a bit of a deep dive into something that feels, well, profoundly unsettling. We've gathered a collection of personal accounts, stories from people who've gone out into nature hiking, maybe running, camping, and bumped into experiences that were genuinely creepy, like the veil between normal life and something truly bizarre just thinned out for a moment. Our sources for this, they're individual stories shared online mostly. They detail these moments, usually alone out in the wilderness or these kind of secluded spots when things went from, peaceful quiet to just pure dread.
Yeah. And our mission today, I guess, is to really look at these stories, pull out the bits that make them stick in your mind, see if there are patterns, and sort of understand what these encounters might tell us.
Exactly. And these aren't just like campfire tales you hear.
No, they feel raw, immediate. They capture that real vulnerability you feel when you're alone in a huge, maybe indifferent natural space. And the terror when that quiet is broken by something you just can't explain.
Totally. So maybe find a comfortable spot. Might want to double check the locks. Just kidding. Mostly. We're about to explore some encounters that really defy easy explanation. Let's start with our first one. This comes from a solo hiker, Appalachian Trail, Pennsylvania. Late fall.
Okay. Classic setting for this kind of thing.
Right. And they describe it as really beautiful at first. Peaceful, thick forests. You can hear the river nearby, birds singing early in the morning. Just a perfect moment of being alone. They actually pause to just sort of take it all in.
Setting the scene, the calm before the storm, maybe.
Pretty much. And then, bam, the peace just shatters. They heard what sounded exactly like a baby crying off in the distance.
Oh, wow. That's immediately alarming.
Yeah, your first instinct is someone needs help, right?
Yeah.
So they got up, started walking down the trail towards the sound.
Which is a deeply human reaction. You hear distress, you investigate. But that's where it starts getting weird, I bet.
You got it. Because as they walked towards it, trying to get closer, the crying just seemed to stay the same distance away. They walked pretty quickly for maybe half a minute, but couldn't seem to gain on it. It gives you that immediate feeling that something's not right. Things aren't behaving like they should.
That specific detail, the sound not getting closer, that's fascinating. It takes it out of the realm of normal physics, doesn't it? A sound source should get louder. When it doesn't, it's like a signal that whatever's making the sound isn't playing by the rules you understand. It's that uncanny feeling right away.
Right, like the rules are suspended. Anyway, the hiker eventually gave up, figured maybe it was someone else further ahead who just stopped or moved off. They sat down on another rock, even pulled out their phone to take a video of the nice scenery, now that the crying seemed to have stopped.
Okay, trying to reset to normal.
Trying to. And that's when they heard footsteps nearby. Coming closer, they expected, another hiker maybe. But then this woman appeared, described as looking really frantic, and she came towards them fast, uncomfortably fast and close.
So the strangeness goes from an abstract sound to a very concrete human presence, but one that's immediately off-putting. The speed, the frantic look, stopping way too close that violates all those unspoken rules of trail encounters, personal space in the middle of nowhere.
Totally. She stops right there, way too close, and basically screams, "Have you seen my baby?" The hiker, trying to stay calm, said, "Yeah, I heard crying a few minutes ago back down the trail that way," and offered to walk back with her.
Okay, still trying to help.
Noble. So they start walking back quickly, side by side almost. The hiker keeps glancing back, like every few seconds, just to make sure she's still right there.
Checking, yeah.
They even worked up the nerve to ask her, how did you lose your baby? But she didn't answer, just kept moving. And then the hiker turns back around, fully maybe 10 seconds after seeing her right there, and she's just gone, vanished.
Wow, okay. And that's insight number one, maybe, from these stories. The impossible disappearance. When someone who is just physically present is suddenly not there seconds later, it's not just startling, it shakes your whole perception of what's real. It tells you this isn't a normal person or animal. It's something that can apparently ignore the basic rules of physics as you know them. It's profoundly unsettling.
Absolutely. The hiker yelled out for her nothing. Just silence, except for the birds in the river again. They figured even if she just run off the trail into the woods, they should still be able to see her or hear her nearby. But nope. Nothing. They just stood there for a bit trying to process what just happened.
Yeah, what do you do then?
Well, they did one last quick look around the area they'd just come from, and that's when they saw her again.
Oh no, where?
Across the river. In the exact spot where they'd heard the crying in the first place.
Okay, creepy.
But this time, She was just standing there, still, like a statue, arms just hanging lifelessly at her sides, blank expression, just watching them, not moving a muscle.
Chilling. And that brings us to maybe insight number 2, the uncanny observer. Seeing her reappear, especially across a barrier like a river and in that totally static, unnatural pose, it shifts the whole thing. It's not someone needing help anymore or even just a strange encounter. It feels malicious, alien, like it's just observing you. It's this presence that feels deeply wrong and targeted. It generates pure psychological fear just by being there, motionless, watching.
Yeah, that final image was the thing that really pushed the hiker over the edge. They described just deciding instantly, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
Turned around, walked away as fast as they could without running, and ended up cutting the whole hiking trip short. They were left totally unsettled, questioning their sanity because it felt so real, but also completely impossible. Wondering if others had similar freakish experiences out there.
I bet. That's a story that would stick with you, for sure.
Okay, let's shift gears. Story number 2. This one comes from a runner. It happened in a big suburban preserve late at night back in 2016.
All right. Different setting. Suburbia, but still isolated.
Exactly. This person liked running alone, even late, like 11 p.m. And this preserve, pitch black, no lights anywhere. They started their run on a dirt trail, just using their phone flashlight. And they mentioned almost casually that a dead body had actually been found in that same preserve just the week before.
Whoa. Okay.
But they tried not to let it freak them out, figuring it was generally a safe area, maybe a one-off thing.
That combination, though, isolation, night, no lights, and a recent death nearby, that sets a baseline of vulnerability right from the start, doesn't it? Makes anything else that happens feel even more intense.
Definitely. So about 10 minutes into the run, they're feeling tired, sit down on a bench to catch their breath. And that's when the isolation really sinks in. Suddenly feels super creepy being alone in the pitch black. They start hearing weird sounds all around, but, initially thought, just animals.
Standard rationalization.
Right, but then they heard leaves and sticks crunching. Closer. Still thinking, okay, maybe a deer, something bigger. Until they saw something tall, hiding behind a tree just off the path. Hard to see clearly with just the phone light, but definitely something human-sized. And standing unnaturally still.
Okay, that's the shift. From background noise to something specific. Hiding. That implies intent, not just an animal wandering by.
Exactly. They decided, maybe foolishly, maybe bravely, I don't know, to approach cautiously, kind of crouch walking closer to get a better look. As they got near, they saw a hand wrapped around the tree trunk, and it was wearing an old white glove.
The glove, that's the detail. It's artificial. Theatrical almost. It immediately rules out an animal, probably even just some random person. It signals something. Deliberate. A performance. And that's deeply unnerving. It confirms the presence is meant to be there.
Yeah, the runner described their heart just plummeting at that moment, feeling like, okay, this is suddenly a life or death situation, even before seeing the face.
Adrenaline dump. Yeah.
And then the figure stepped out into the light. Someone dressed as a clown.
Right.
Yep. And the source specifically mentions this was during the clown epidemic back in 2016.
Right. That context is absolutely crucial. Insight number 3, maybe. Context amplifies terror. Seeing a clown in the woods at night is bizarre anytime. But in 2016, when the sightings were all over the news, it taps into this pre-existing real-world fear. It wasn't just a costume, it was that specific, loaded costume.
Totally. But here's where it goes beyond just creepy sighting into pure terror, the most disturbing detail. The clown was holding a baseball bat.
Okay.
With a huge, foot-long metal spike jammed right through it.
Oh my god, okay. That changes everything. That moves it from uncanny sighting to direct, overt, malicious threat. No ambiguity left. It's a figure designed to terrify, holding a weapon clearly designed to inflict serious harm. It's like... Insight number 4. The uncanny weapon. A normal object, the bat, made horrific by an unnatural addition, the spike. Just like the clown figure itself, it weaponizes that feeling of wrongness.
And the description said the clown's head was sort of angled down, giving this menacing look, and they started walking very slowly towards the runner.
The slow walk.
Yeah.
Deliberate, menacing.
The runners only thought, run. Didn't even stick to the trail. Just bolted off into the dark woods, running flat out, felt like they were going to collapse. They finally ducked behind a tree, turned off their flashlight, just crouched there, trying to hide, heart pounding.
Smart move, get out of the light.
And they heard running footsteps zoom past, maybe just 10 feet away. The sound of pursuit.
Chasing them.
Yeah. Once the footsteps faded, the runner waited a beat, then scrambled back towards the trail and ran all the way back out the way they came. The source says they actually got sick, threw up by the time they reached the street, just from the fear and the exertion.
I absolutely believe it. Pure terror response.
And the final detail from this source is that pretty much everyone in town figured that dead body found the week before was linked to this whole clown thing. The runner was so shaken, they avoided the preserve for ages and never ever ran there after dark again.
Understandable. This story, it hits a different fear, doesn't it? Not just the unknown, but a direct, personalized threat from a figure that's trying to be terrifying. It plays on that vulnerability and isolation, using visuals, the weapon, that slow approach. It feels like insight number 5, the performance of terror. Some encounters aren't just weird things happening, they feel staged, designed to maximize fear through costume, weapon, deliberate movement, then the chase.
Yeah, utterly terrifying. Okay, let's move to our third and final account for today. This one involves a solo camping trip. Just a few miles from home, so not deep wilderness, but still isolated.
Okay. Solo camping, another classic setup for unease.
Right. Person sets up their tent, has some food, takes a nap, then goes for a hike nearby. Starts off totally normal, peaceful hike. But then, they thought they heard footsteps nearby. Could have been an animal, but they sounded distinctly human-like, which felt odd, being pretty deep in the woods there, away from main trails. Didn't investigate, though. Just noted it and kept hiking.
That initial seed of doubt again, the sound of a person where there shouldn't be one, plants that little bit of unease.
Exactly. And that seed definitely grew when they got back to their tent. First thing they noticed. The zipper was undone. The door flap was open.
Oh no. Immediate fear, intrusion.
Totally. Checked inside, nobody there. But their bag had clearly been rummaged through.
Huh.
And here's the really weird part. Nothing was taken. Wallet still there, gear still there, nothing missing.
Okay, that is strange and unsettling. It shifts the motive, doesn't it? If nothing's stolen, why go in? Why rifle through the bag? It makes the act itself feel more personal, maybe more malicious. It's insight number 6, violation without apparent motive. Your space is invaded, but for no obvious gain. The act itself becomes the threat. It's less about losing stuff and more about feeling watched, targeted.
Right. They actually considered packing up and leaving right then, but ended up deciding against it, figuring, well, whoever it was already checked the place out, they probably won't come back.
Risky logic, maybe, but I can see the thought process.
Yeah. So fast forward to that night, trying to get to sleep in the tent. A few minutes after settling into their sleeping bag, they heard a noise. For a time, couldn't quite place it. But the second time it happened, it sounded like a staticky breathing sound.
Ooh, static. That adds a weird electronic element. Breathing implies something living. Odd combination.
Definitely odd. They sat bolt upright, looked around in the dark tent, silence again. They lay back down, trying to rationalize it. But just seconds later, the noise was back. That grainy, staticky breathing.
The persistence. It feels deliberate, doesn't it? Not just random interference. It feels present. And being trapped in a small tent, sound is just amplified, so immediate and threatening.
Totally. Driven by fear now, they start frantically digging through their bag, trying to find where this sound is coming from, and they pull out something they know wasn't theirs. A huge, old-looking, sort of archaic walkie-talkie thing. The static breathing was coming from it.
Whoa. Okay. Planted.
Instantly connected it to the footsteps earlier, and whoever searched the tent. But the question is, why leave it? What's the point of leaving this weird walkie-talkie?
Exactly. It's such a bizarre clue. It's old tech, but it implies communication, right? Leaving it behind when nothing else was taken, it feels like a calling card. Or a way to maintain contact or presence without being physically there. Super strange.
And then came the moment that, as they described it, changed everything. The static stopped. The breathing sound came clearly from the walkie-talkie again, followed by a deep, really hard to understand whisper that said, "I'm not your cat."
I'm not your cat. Good Lord, that's utterly chilling. And maybe leads to insight number 7, the personalized, uncanny message. A message that's completely nonsensical, deeply weird, delivered through this unexpected planted device. It makes the encounter terrifyingly personal, but also incomprehensible. I'm not your cat. You can't even process that as a normal threat. It breaks down rational thought. It feels like deliberate psychological warfare almost, designed to confuse and terrify.
Yeah, the person describes feeling like their whole world just shifted in that second. Just pure, overwhelming fear. They started frantically mashing buttons on the walkie-talkie until it seemed to turn off.
Trying to regain control, stop the intrusion.
But then they heard something heavy hit the ground just outside the tent. Thump.
Oh man. Escalation.
Followed by something else hitting the ground right outside the tent wall. Closer.
So it's moved. From auditory intrusion through the device to a physical immediate presence right outside that thin tent wall, the threat is no longer remote, it's right there.
Faced with that stark choice, stay put and find out what's making those noises, or run when they heard that second thud right outside. Decision made. Scrambled out of the tent, didn't look back, just made a beeline straight for their pickup truck, left everything, tent, sleeping bag, all the gear, just ran.
Don't blame them one bit. Get out.
The source's final thought on it was wondering, was it all just an elaborate trap to scare them into abandoning their gear so it could be stolen? Or was it genuinely someone, or something, that meant serious harm? Either way, they felt their life was absolutely on the line in that moment.
That story really builds terror through layers, doesn't it? The footsteps, the weird tent search with nothing taken, the inexplicable walkie-talkie, that deeply unsettling message, then the physical sounds right outside. It's like a masterclass in psychological horror. It makes the victim feel specifically chosen, targeted, and completely vulnerable to a threat they just cannot comprehend.
So, okay, we've gone through these really unsettling accounts. The static woman by the river, the clown with the spiked bat, the walkie-talkie whispering, "I'm not your cat." They're wildly different on the surface, but as you've been pointing out, they seem to share these powerful underlying elements, don't they?
Exactly. And if we sort of connect those threads, those insights we pulled out, we see why these stories hit so hard. They tap into really deep primal anxieties. Like insight number 8 might be isolation as an amplifier. Being out in the wilderness or even just a dark preserve removes that safety net of other people, of society. It makes every strange sound, every shadow potentially terrifying because help feels so far away.
Good point.
And they confront us with the uncanny, right? Things that look or sound almost human but are just profoundly wrong or that defy basic explanation. That's maybe Insight 9, the breakdown of reality, encounters with impossible disappearances or static figures or objects talking when they attack our basic understanding of how the world works. That makes them much more disturbing than just seeing a bear or even a normal human threat.
Yeah, it messes with your head on a fundamental level.
And maybe the most terrifying thread running through them is that feeling of being watched, followed, singled out when you thought you were completely alone. Insight number 10, you are not alone, but wish you were. That sudden realization that some other consciousness is aware of you, observing you, maybe pursuing you, especially when that entity feels malevolent or just not right, not human, that taps into a primal fear of being prey.
These stories, they really remind us that the peace we seek in nature, that solitude, while it can be restorative, it can also instantly become a stage for our deepest fears. They tap into that old part of our brain, the part that knows we're vulnerable when we step away from the safety of the group out into the unknown. They show how fast a quiet, peaceful moment can flip into a desperate fight or flight situation against something that might not even be real in the way we usually understand real.
Yeah, these accounts really do make you pause. They make you wonder about those moments where reality just seems to fray around the edges. If you found yourself totally alone, miles from help, and you encountered something genuinely inexplicable, truly terrifying, how would you even know if it was real? Or was it just the wilderness, the darkness, playing tricks on your mind, amplified by your own fear?
That is a chilling thought to leave you with, maybe next time you're considering a walk in the woods after dark.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into these very unsettling encounters.
It's been fascinating, definitely unnerving looking at this source material.
Until next time.